Welcome to Making Sense of Martech podcast, where we interview leaders and put them in the hot seat. I'm Jacqueline Freedman, founder of Monarch and global head of advisory for the Martech Weekly. Let's dive in and meet for the very first time Sam Allen, the new Chief Executive Officer at Iterable. A little bit about him first. He is a veteran Salesforce executive, former Marine Corps officer, and he brings over 30 years of leadership across enterprise growth, M&A, analytics. He's held pivotal roles at Tableau, Salesforce.org, and most recently served as the Executive Vice President of Global Pipeline at Salesforce. We'll begin with a few rapid fire questions to get us going, but first and foremost, welcome. Thank you for coming on the pod.
Thanks, Jacqueline. I really appreciate that. We're excited to be here. Thank you.
Excited to have you here. All right. So we're going to start off a little spicy. Legacy or next-gen tech?
Next-gen tech.
Okay. And I hear you're a dog person. Name your favorite breed.
Well, I'm kind of duty-bound to say Frenchie because that's what I have. I've had Frenchies for about 15 years, but to be very honest with you, I love a good mutt.
Understood. Okay. What is your favorite Salesforce character/mascot?
That's a good question. I would say Cody the bear. Cody kind of represents building things, making things, and that's just something I deeply believe in.
I love that. And what is one marketing buzzword you would love to ban forever?
Marketecture, I think, is one that
spicy.
Never been a fan of. Make it real. It's kind of a little trite to say because you do need to be able to pitch vision, but never been a fan of that term.
Good to know. Okay. What is the biggest marketing mistake or mess up you've witnessed in your career?
I won't tell you who it was with, but I saw someone who ran a very big field marketing division want to send, I think it was about 1,000 boxes out as an ABM, account-based marketing campaign. And it struck me as very dated, and it was not cheap to do that. It was all sent FedEx overnight, bespoke to executives. And not only did it not generate anything, but quite a few people were upset that we were sending things to their home. And how did you get my address and all that kind of thing? That did not go over well. So that was a pretty good lesson learned.
Yeah, it's tricky because I think in-person and opening experiences are coming back in full force. But to your point, it needs to make sense, needs to be targeted.
Good idea, not well executed.
Yes, exactly. And the last rapid fire question we ask everyone, who is someone you admire, whether it's professional or personal?
Yeah, I think personally, kind of be an easy one, but I really admire my mother. I mean, she had to raise 3 rambunctious, testosterone-fueled boys largely on her own, and that was not an easy thing to do. And she's still amazingly at 87 in great spirits and great health. Professionally, and this may come off a little bit different, but someone I've always really admired is Clint Eastwood, primarily because, he's in his mid-90s and he is still incredibly active. And there's an interesting side note I heard about him that I like to tell people. He was being interviewed by Toby Keith, who was a country music singer who was going to do a song for one of his films. And Toby just said, how do you do it? How do you at your age continue to just perform at a high level? And Clint Eastwood said, the secret is you don't let the old man in. And I use that all the time. If I ever feel like I'm too tired to do something or I'm not energized, I'm like, don't let the old man in. And so it's been a very inspirational phrase I've been using for the last couple of years.
I like that. And it's almost like never grow up, even if you are grown up.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I love that. You served in the Marines for over 10 years. One, thank you for your service. But how do you see your experiences, even those potential routines that came from it, affect your leadership style today?
Well, so the most important thing is you always put your people first. There's a term now it's been bandied about for the last few years called servant leadership. But that's really the biggest lesson for me learned in the Marine Corps is that you come last, right? Except when you lead from the front. It's kind of this weird thing. But, you eat last, you go to bed last, you're last in line for a lot of things so that your Marines can participate more than you can. And then the second thing is, along the same lines, is always make sure they have what they need to do their job. And I've always felt that as a leader, my job is to make sure the people who work for me can do their job well, and whether it's equipment or training or enablement or investment, career growth, whatever it might be, that's your number one job as a leader. And those are 2 fundamentals that I learned in the Marine Corps that have stuck with me my entire professional career and have been very appreciative of them.
I think a lot of leaders could use that advice, hopefully. It comes to
Well, one more thing, by the way, just to add there is, the Marine Corps it's a lot of things and there's a lot of assumptions about it, but I will tell you, it is a very direct world. And I have found that people constantly crave transparency in leadership. And it's just kind of amazing to me that leaders can't provide transparency. And so that's just been another hallmark of mine that I've kept and has been a real boon for me as I've built high performing teams.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree, having experienced the exact opposite of all the things you have outlined. And just one great example, that is WeWork.
Yeah.
And I was an early employee there.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's a podcast in and of itself.
For sure. It would be more truthful than any documentary or TV series. They all tried.
Yeah.
From the outside looking in, you've gone from the Goliath to the David. You've transitioned from scaling enterprise operations at Salesforce and Tableau. What made you decide to switch to Iterable? What drew you to the product, the team, to inspire this transition?
Yeah, so it's a combination of things. Iterable itself is an amazing company. It's one I've admired from afar for a while. I think their innovation is stellar. We live in a world where, specific technologies aside, companies are always going to want to have engaging relationships with their customers, and Iterable provides an amazing platform for that. So, and that's proven out by, if you look at product reviews on sites like G2 Crowd, like it's the highest rated product by customers, which I think is the loudest voice in the room. So it's an amazing product. It's a fantastic team. Obviously, I spent a lot of time in diligence before I jumped into this with not only the executive team, but also people in the trenches to really understand the culture, how we operate. And so are cultural things buzzwords, or are they real? How threaded through the organization are they? How important is innovation? Because at the root, we're a technology company and we've got to deliver amazing products. And so innovation is so important. From a personal perspective, yeah, I had this amazing career. You'll never ever hear me say a single negative thing about Salesforce. It's an absolutely amazing company. I love my time there. Mark Benioff is a true genius. And I take a lot of what I learned and I want to apply that here. But from a personal growth perspective, it felt like it was really time for me to go do something else. I had gotten a long way in that company, done a lot of amazing things, but I felt like it was time for me to jump into a CEO seat myself and take full responsibility and grab the reins. I am someone who loves responsibility. I'm a pressure player. I love to make decisions. And so I just felt like it was really time, from an own personal growth perspective, to jump in, take the opportunity to lead an entire organization and really succeed or fail based on my leadership. And I am really starved for that and ready for that. I just feel like this was the right time. And then the last thing I'll say is Iterable is the right kind of size of company. I obviously, in the technology sector, some of my background, you get a lot of outreach about opportunities. I really didn't want to go to another public company. Like, why would I leave Salesforce to do that? I didn't want to go to an early stage company. I've built an early stage company before. I've kind of checked that box and it just wasn't compelling to me. I like breadth and scale and complexity, and Iterable was the perfect size for that and provides amazing opportunities for growth. So it just checked a lot of boxes for me.
Understood. And even though you didn't say anything bad, I'm just going to go ahead and say you chose next gen tech over legacy tech. So maybe Marketing Cloud deserves a little bit of a little something there. And I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up that Iterable has experienced several very public leadership changes over the past number of years. How do you step into this role with both fresh eyes while honoring both the legacy and the lessons of that history?
Yeah. First of all, all companies evolve, and Iterable is no exception to that rule. I think it's important for me to understand the context of this history of Iterable, how it got to where it is today, both successes and challenges, understand where this company has done well, understand where it stumbled, and every company has gone through those things. So that's the kind of looking back. But my philosophy is I don't lead through the rearview mirror. We have too much in front of us. I think it's important to understand the context and the legacy, but that's not going to create the platform for decision making in the future. And there was a lot for us to go accomplish. We have an amazing team to go do that. And so for me, it's, yes, I want to understand where this company has been, because it's going to help me refine the journey forward. But make no mistake, I am here to drive growth in this company. And I'm very excited to do that.
Understood. And on your LinkedIn post announcing that you were going to come to Iterable, you mentioned an admiration for the innovation and impact. How is that inspiring your priorities as CEO?
Yeah. So when I was going through my interview process, I went to Activate, back in April, Iterable's annual user conference. Andrew Bonney came out, the founder, and did this amazing presentation on Nova, which is, the kind of next horizon AI fueled capabilities that are threaded throughout the Iterable platform. And when he completed his keynote, he came down, sat next to me, and said, "Hey, what'd you think?" I said, "It's great. I just have one question for you. How much of that is stigma?" And he said, actually very little. It's working code. He goes, there was some UX design stuff we did at the front to make it more easy to share with the crowd. But he said, this is a working code. And this is something that, we're going to be rolling out, in stages in the very near future. And so for me, that was incredibly, incredibly compelling. And I was just tremendously excited about that. And I know that companies are trying to engage more uniquely with their customers. I am a customer of many brands. I want them to treat me like I'm their only customer. And Iterable really has the capability to do that at scale. And so that's what I'm really excited about.
I love to hear that. And that's a kind of a great segue into now that Andrew Bonney is going to be the chief scientist. What is that division of labor between innovation versus execution, and kind of how do you plan to work together?
Yeah, so I'm very excited that that we've got him in the role that we do. So to answer your question very succinctly, I am part and parcel. I'm here to drive execution. I am the chief executive. That is my responsibility. Set the plan, drive accountability, drive performance, make sure we take care of our people, take care of our customers, evolve the brand and evolve the values in the company. We can talk about that in a minute if you like. But I'm also very cognizant of I'm new. There's a lot for me to learn. I am going to be almost completely heads down for 6 to 12 months. I am so happy Andrew Bonney is here to really be thinking of next horizon. Like, he is the person who built this company. He is the person who came up with the vision for Nova. He is responsible for helping execute that vision. In our technology sector, and tying this back to next gen technology, everything happens at an accelerating pace. And AI is the most amazingly impactful, accelerated technology I've seen in my lifetime. That's not going to slow down. And so the fact he is here on the team thinking about 3-5 chess moves ahead is actually a great boon for us, because I can really, really focus on driving the company and driving success. And he can have his head up looking downfield and thinking about where this technology is going and how that needs to tie back into our strategy. So it's going to be an excellent, I think, combination of skill sets for us to go drive success.
I agree. And you kind of alluded to it, but with the latest waves of AI innovation in general for the Martech industry, they've all really been point and shoot solutions. It's, one singular thing versus I've seen the demos of Nova. I'm glad to know it wasn't all Figma. It's a complete and total overhaul of the interface. And I think we are entering into the new AI landscape that is all interface based. Who's going to be that winner? So what was, if you could speak on behalf of Bonnie and the greater team, like what was the impetus and vision for Nova as opposed to, personalizing copy on this one use case and doing it at scale?
Well, if we back up a minute, the primary thing is to, not that marketers aren't valuable, they're incredibly valuable, but how do you make them more valuable in the eyes of the business that they support? And the way that you do that is you deliver amazing top line results in an efficient manner without asking for a bunch of resources to do that. And so what Nova is doing is creating a set of AI capabilities and agentics that are going to allow those campaign managers to drive those bespoke, personalized campaigns and events with users and prospects that make those users and prospects feel like, as I mentioned earlier, that they're the only customer. And we're going to do that at scale, and we're going to do that very, very high stability in the system. It's not a point solution. This is a platform that is going to drive tremendous success for the marketing department. From a vision perspective, I want to make sure that CMOs have a seat at the table when strategic decisions are being made about how a given company is going to operate its business. And the best way to do that is to make that CMO an incredibly important part of, again, top line growth and margin. We, as a technology industry, especially in the SaaS business, we've really shifted just in the last few years, where it used to be grow at all costs, don't worry about margin. And that has shifted tremendously, where you need to be good stewards of money. You need to grow, but you need to grow efficiently. And so you think about that in the construct of marketing technology. How do you grow your user base, grow your engagement without asking for a bunch of more capital? And the way you do that is through an advanced technology like Nova.
I like the sound of that. If only everyone took notice. Speaking of AI, it's only as intelligent and, most importantly, as ethical as the people who are building it. What is your litmus test for responsible AI in marketing, and kind of where's your head at there?
Yeah, this is a really important thing for us. And I mean, when I say us, I mean the technology sector. And I'll refer back to Mark Benioff. I think he's made an amazing set of very accountable positioning statements on AI. And look, AI is a tool. It can be used for good or bad. It needs to be developed in an ethical way. I am a supporter of policy. both in Europe and the US that's being discussed right now around, I don't think this is the right word, but effectively governance and how you develop AI models. For me, we have to really deeply understand the use cases of our customer base. We have to present them as a partner with how they should be thinking about the capability, not just the capabilities of AI and what the art of the possible is, but how actually that will make them better. And then we need to have very strong feedback mechanisms and feedback loops with our customers so that when there are challenges with AI, and we haven't seen it yet on our side, but they may occur, that we jump on top of those. We are committed to making sure that our solutions and our capabilities are best in class and best in breed. And that's why, being a values-based company is so important to me. I'm a very strong values-based leader. And this is a values-based company, so that is alignment with one of the things that drew me here. And we will continue to focus on that. And, Andrew Bonney feels the same way as the chief scientist. Like, we are very, very committed to ethical use of AI.
I love the sound of that, and also kind of maybe where values come into play with this next question. We're in the midst of an AI talent war. You read any headline and you're seeing some crazy numbers, crazy things. From a leadership strategy or philosophy for maintaining top talent, is, to your point, those core values, those ethics top of mind, or how are you navigating this greater?
Yeah, so, the AI talent war is a bubble within a bubble within a bubble. And yeah, the numbers that you're seeing getting thrown around economically are just crazy. It's like professional athlete level compensation. My philosophy, to answer your question, is you want to create an environment that people think they can do their best work and feel supported and love the people around them. And money doesn't do that. Money, to me, is a short-term thing. It is something that some people, unfortunately, tie their ego to. But if you look at the reasons why people leave a company, money is always like the seventh reason, right? It's the boss, the ethos, the people they work with, the opportunity. And so I think that creating an environment that people want to be in, that they want to engage in, that they want to do the best work of their lives, they really are customer-centric. I kind of question someone who's just going to jump ship to ship for these huge pay packages. How are you impacting the customer experience by doing that? Are you putting the customer first? Are you putting your team first? Are you putting your people first? The answer to all those things is no. You're putting yourself first. And selfishness is not a path to success really anywhere. Maybe it is to economic success, and maybe someone can point to me and laugh and say, I've got X millions of dollars in my pocket. I'd rather look myself in the mirror every night and feel good about the ethical environment that I live in and the commitments I make to the people around me and the customers that we support and all that. So, good for them, I guess, in some respects. But I think you need to build, and my objective, we already have a great culture, but is to continue to evolve and build a phenomenal culture that people just want to be a part of. And, this whole craziness around, buying out companies, I think, or buying out people, that's gonna fade. That's why I use the bubble language, because it will pop.
It for sure is a bubble. But to your point, money is very important at the same time, and often a very key reason why today's brands and marketing teams end up prioritizing certain vendors outside of price constraints, potentially. What are other top reasons folks should be leveraging certain frameworks as they evaluate and prioritize which vendors suits them best?
One way to answer that is to actually start to change the semantics. And so, vendor is an interesting term. Vendor connotes a transactional environment. And that's not what I want to build. I started to talk to our sales leader about this, and he agrees. But we need an environment where we are a trusted advisor. This is something that Mark built at Salesforce. So I didn't come up with this on my own, but I've seen it work at massive scale. And I know it works because I have been in rooms with CIOs of Fortune 50 companies and talked to them about this. And they are willing to spend money with you if they feel like you are a partner for them for the long term. Very few people actually understand the implications and the possibilities of AI. I mean, your question about ethical use is an example of that. These customers and prospects want someone to help steer them through that. And so I think the companies that are going to long-term win and perform the best are ones that have that mindset. And every time I've walked into a sales cycle, and sometimes this is to the chagrin of our own salespeople, I will say, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here to make sure that you feel supported to the customer and that we are building a long-term relationship with one another. Because I don't want you as a customer for this quarter. I want you as a customer for the long term. And then I want to build a relationship with you. And I want to have you be part of my process when we think about strategy. And I want to have you join our customer advisory board and come to the Activate Summit. And I'd love to go speak at your employee event or whatever. I think that relationship thing is tremendously important. Now, at the end of the day, we have a business to run, and yes, we have quarterly commitments, and we want to hit all those and exceed them. But the need for a company like us or any company to really build that mindset of we are here to be your partner in this, to learn from one another, I think is the winning strategy. And that's what we're going to do here at Iterable.
Agreed. I think thinking about the entire market as partners and that partner ecosystem you build for your team is far more important than a point and shoot. We chose this vendor because it solves X and Y.
Yeah.
About the fabric in which you choose your different partners and platforms.
Yeah, there's one caveat to all of that. I mean, everyone has constraints, right? And, you do have, and many oftentimes, like, this is my budget for this project, right? And so that's where the point and shoot thing can come in. But it's really, again, more about, okay, well, if that's your budget, that's fine. Let's figure out the art of the possible. But I don't want to get lost in that transaction environment. I want to say, okay, let's make sure we get this done to support you and your business. You should pick us because we are going to make you the most successful. But in the long run, you continue that interaction, right? Help them build. And, the last thing on this, look, people change careers, they change jobs, they change companies all the time. And you want to make sure you have a strong relationship. So when that VP of demand generation goes to be the CMO of another company, you automatically have a bridge there. And I think too often people lose sight of that. And so that's something that I think is really important around the relationship as well.
I agree with you. And I also will push back. I don't think any vendor decisions should be made from the top down. It should always be from the ground up. But I do understand the sentiment and the thought in particular. And I know, for example, of course, Iterable has plenty of competitors. I mean, your former company, Marketing Cloud, there's Braze, Responsys. How are you seeing Iterable in the current environment standing out from its competitors?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, those are all amazing competitors. They have great products and solutions and great leadership. And, I know leaders in all those companies. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, it's going to be an easy path. But here's what I will tell you. We are going to give everything that we have to driving customer success. I will say that we have some architectural advantages. When I go back and talk about partnership, and when we explain to our prospects and our customers why they should invest with Iterable, that's going to be a large part of the conversation. We are architected from the ground up to be an AI-centric company. Many of those people you mentioned are not. AI is either a bolt-on or an acquisition. They have to figure out how to integrate. They have distributed architectures where data residency, storage, compute, queuing are in different stacks. All of ours are in a single stack, reducing the opportunity for loss of those multiple transaction nodes. And so this is one of the things that actually brought me here. I'm like, this is a much easier solution. And in the space of AI, as we mentioned earlier, it's nebulous and confusing. And the more clean you can be and the more clarity you can provide, the more advantage you have. So we have a distinct competitive advantage because we are architected better, I think, than anybody else. It's really up to us to go take advantage of that and leverage it the right way. But I'm very much a believer in focusing on your strengths. This could come from my Marine Corps training. It could come from martial arts I used to practice. But, take advantage of where you're strong and where your opponent is weak. And, that is something that we're going to focus on strategically.
Understood. What was the martial art you used to participate in?
Well, it was two. There's a specific martial arts in the Marine Corps, which is like a combination of a bunch of things. And then after I left the Marines, I practiced judo for a while.
Oh, amazing. You got good balance.
I used to. My knees were kind of shot, but yeah.
Understood. Well, kind of taking even a further step back, obviously, I gave kind of a pointed question because there definitely will always be competitors in the space. And I'm a big fan of competition because it makes every single platform better. And I don't believe in betting on only one horse. If you did have to make a bet on one horse, and it's not a vendor, but in general, what's the big bet over the next 3 to 5 years you're thinking about for marketers?
Yeah. I'm going to pull back a little bit on that. 5 years is eon in the technology sector.
That's fair.
But I will say, so think about this. 18 months ago, AI was a nebulous thing that science fiction talked about, and now it's everywhere in business. And so that is going to, as I mentioned earlier, it's going to continue to accelerate. And so from my lens perspective, this is why I love having Andrew Bonney as a thought partner and a strategist around vision. Where is this going to accelerate to? And so what we have an opportunity to do is come up with that kind of answer. Like, where do we think this is going to be in 2 years? I don't have a specific answer, but I will tell you this. The move to make marketing a core high value component of every business in terms of, hey, this organization is really driving our top line is going to be key to what we provide. And you can only drive super top line at an efficient level if you're delivering technologies that are very bespoke and that can be leveraged to drive those unique relationships with the customer's customer. And so for me, as we continue to evolve the technology and evolve the roadmap, if we keep that as a central tenet, like this needs to be our North Star when we come up with the plethora of ideas for advancement in our technologies, I think we'll be in a good spot. I'm always going to be paranoid of the competition. They're all well funded. Like I said, they're well led, great companies. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they're bad technologies because they're not. So it's going to be a fun dogfight for sure, but I'm looking forward to it.
And there's some former coworkers of yours at all of these different.
Yeah,
There's been a little bit of a mass
one of my dearest
exodus.
friends is now the CRO of Braze, and so he and I have had a fun text exchange. But
I bet.
Yeah.
Love to hear it. We've kind of alluded to this a bit earlier, but I'm curious, as so many leaders talk about AI transformations, very few are discussing the actual human impact from job shifts, erosion of trust, model biases. How is Iterable growing its AI offerings? And what's your responsibility to the people and not solely the platform?
Yeah. So it's a great question, somewhat an existential one that some of us are struggling with it. Some of us don't care. When I say us, I mean broadly the technology sector. But I answer this question in a number of ways. So I was in advance of taking this job. I just feel like I needed to prep myself more. And so I've been reading some old management books. And so I was reading a book by Andy Grove, who was the CEO of Intel in the 70s and 80s when it blew up as this amazing company. Phenomenal CEO. He's no longer with us. And he wrote the book in 1982. And there's a section in the book where he's talking about how he's walking through the stenographer pool to go to the mailroom. This country used to have tens of thousands of stenographers. And if you ask people under the age of 40, they probably know what a stenographer even is, right? Mailrooms don't exist any longer for the large part. And so, this is a continuing trend. Now, what's interesting about what's happening with AI is that traditionally technologies have really eroded jobs in what you can quote unquote call the blue collar sector or in the labor market. This is eroding jobs or impacting jobs, not eroding jobs, impacting jobs in the white collar market and in the knowledge worker market. So that's something to think about. But the flip side is, and this is why I talked about next gen technology at the beginning and why I always believe in technology, is it's creating jobs as well. Every technology has taken jobs, impacted jobs, but created new jobs. There's a job called prompt writer. That job didn't exist 6 months ago. And now almost every company is hiring people to write prompts for AI, prompts for engineering, prompts for marketing, prompts for business planning. And so that's a job that didn't exist before. And so that's just my soliloquy on how I think about it. To answer your question more specifically, the way I want to present this to customers is, look, we're going to provide you the capability with our AI fueled solutions to drive amazing results. You can take capital that you would have spent in marketing and spend it somewhere else, right? So we are making you more efficient. We're making you more flexible in your capital allocation, and you can go hire more people in different parts of your business. You can go get more real estate, buy more ad campaigns on top or whatever. So that's how I think about it. I think about it from just in terms of how are we kind of growing the overall pie. I think as a technologist, we always have to be, we talked about the ethics earlier. I think we always have to have an eye on that. And it's something that we as an industry need to continue to discuss. But to be very blunt, it's not going to slow us down. I mean, it's just this, as technologists, we are constantly pushing the envelope and seeing how far we can go. So that's why I think the ethical use stuff is so important to kind of keep us grounded a little bit. And you made a comment earlier about decision making and people in the trenches. I'm not sure what term you used, but I agree with that. And so one of my self mandates as a leader is to constantly be connected with the people at the end of the day who are doing the real work. And I'm going to rely on that connection to help me think about, are we doing the right thing? How are we impacting the environment around us? It's something I've done my whole career, and I'll continue to do it here.
I love the sound of that. And for those of us who don't know what a stenographer is, would you like to define it?
It's a typist. So, it used to be that I'd sit in a room as an executive or a manager, and I would turn to someone and say, hey, here's the memo I want you to write, and make sure it gets out to 50 people. And then that person would go sit at a desk and type it up, and then type a memo and take it to a room and Xerox 50 copies of it or whatever. And every kind of mid-level manager and above had this person that wrote memos for them. And so that's what a stenographer did. Probably underselling it, but that's kind of what it was.
No, that makes sense. It also reminds me of those who dictate and would hand it off to someone to type it up. Well, taking a larger step back, we have over 15,000 Martech vendors, according to Scott Brinker in his annual report. If you were to predict, how do you think CMOs should be rethinking their marketing tech stack orchestration? And also with my own personal bias of they should be thinking about it, but of course looking to their team to work on it.
Yeah. We know it's interesting. About 10 years ago, that number was 7,500. And, 10 years ago, people were talking about Martech consolidation, and it doubled. I don't know what the right number is, but to answer your question more specifically, this is why I talk about developing long-term partner relationships, advisory relationships with your customers because you want to be the person that helps them understand what they need to invest in versus what they don't. And then somewhat selfishly, it helps you understand, is my roadmap the right roadmap? A reason there are so many different technology vendors in marketing is because there are so many bespoke capabilities. And you could go create a small company that's very successful, and all you're doing is creating marketing campaign capabilities for the manufacturing industry, as an example. Then you can start to split manufacturing and do different things there. And so I think that's a reason why there are so many. I do believe it's a sector that does need consolidation. It's too confusing for customers. Again, that's why the advisory partner piece is so important. It's on a near impossible place to be all things to all people. And so you're always going to have a fairly large number of Martech providers. You also have unique needs in the small, medium business space versus the mid-market versus the enterprise. Those all have very unique requirements to grow and succeed in that space. And some companies will look at that and say, I don't want to have to get certified for that or create, the 5 nines reliability to go penetrate the enterprise. I'll just deal with mom and pop shops. And you can build a great successful business that way. So to me, it's more about focusing on where our core focus areas are, what our core industries are. And I'm still learning what those are at Iterable, but we did very much want to be an enterprise, and we're in the enterprise now, but I want to accelerate that. And so I want to be able to go to an enterprise CMO as an advisor and say, hey, here are the 5 components of your marketing tech stack that you absolutely need to have above and beyond Iterable. And so it's important to me to become an expert in that sector. I know a little bit enough to be dangerous, but I need to become much more expert.
Understood. And yes, I think to your point, we are in that consolidation contraction period. And so I definitely place a lot of wagers and bets on who's next. And I've been pretty good at identifying every single acquisition ahead of it. And so I'm very curious, both not only where that continues to play out, but beyond that, do we learn from the mistakes? Not to throw them under the bus, but they were the best example of Salesforce, of just putting the name on it and not properly integrating. Are we actually bringing in that architecture to the core aspect of the product, or keeping it separate and in its own silo? And so I'm very intrigued to see if we've started to learn our own technical debt mistakes over the years.
Yeah.
And I'm hopeful as well.
Yeah. Well, just one comment on that. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 M&A transactions under my belt between Salesforce and Cisco systems. And Cisco was a bellwether for how you do this. And when I was at Cisco, we did deep integration very fast. And it's interesting to me, and we did it, the latter ones we did at Salesforce. You build a model for an acquisition that you have to pitch to your M&A board. And that always talks about synergies. It's 1 + 1 = 5.
Everyone's favorite word.
Yeah. If you then don't integrate it, what's the point, right? And so I'm a deep, deep believer in that. You are creating these relationships and these marriages of these organizations, and you've got to integrate the families, and that is critical to success.
We're in agreement. So I will be paying close attention. And so we've already kind of talked about potentially advice for CMOs. What do you consider both getting them a seat at the table, but really helping them navigate and secure more budget and respect in the C-suite?
Yeah.
A consistent challenge, I'll be biased and say it's definitely gendered in some regards. And marketing, everyone thinks they can do marketing versus everyone knows they can't be a full stack engineer unless they are one. And so I'm curious, what advice do you have to give to senior leaders who are really advocating for their teams, but maybe not succeeding?
It's a multi-layered problem. First and foremost, marketing, a long time ago, marketing was considered a black box because you didn't have analytics around it, right? And you had analytics around a lot of other things. But that's no longer the case. It hasn't been the case for 2 decades, right? And so, but there's art in marketing. And I don't want to say there's very little art in a lot of other business units, but there's a lot of art in marketing. And good marketers have a lot of art in them. And they build teams who have artistic mindset. And so, that is always hard to pinpoint as a ROI-based decision. So if you go and say, I need 7 more people in my UX team and 5 more people in my product marketing team, some CFO or somebody might say, well, give me the ROI on that headcount. It's like, well, I need to draw up top of funnel and build awareness, and here's what we think, but it's not definitive and it's multivariant, and I need to build a weighted average, and people's eyes start to roll back in their head. But that's the truth of it. And so my advice for CMOs is to understand that perception and create a story that solves that perception. And there's different ways to do that. But as it related to Iterable or our space, it's about, look, I am going to, again, I said this earlier, I'm going to drive more efficient top line growth. I am committed to that. And if you give me the additional investment to buy these technologies, I will prove it and I'll put my name on it. right? And I'll commit my reputation to that. And I think that will be a large help. I think the other thing is, and you know this, there's always this friction between marketing and sales, right?
Never heard of it in my life.
Yeah. When sales is killing it, they're like appreciative of marketing. When they're not killing it, it's because marketing is not driving enough leads or enough high quality leads. And then you go look at the data and you're like, well, I have as many leads. I gave as many leads as I did last quarter. So, I think it's important and incumbent for marketers to really drive strong relationships with sales. I don't believe that, because I've been asked this before, I don't believe CMOs should report to CROs. I think they are peers at minimum.
We are in agreement.
Yeah. And they do need to have a stronger relationship. I think the biggest thing is that I've seen in my career and where I've seen it work versus not work is when sales is in pain, marketing should share that. And so if a marketer comes and says, oh, I'm supposed to deliver 10,000 leads this quarter, I delivered 10,005, so I'm green, but sales missed their number. Oh, well, that's where you get that conflict. My advice to marketers in the past has been, hey, if sales isn't performing, figure out why. What can you do? How can you pivot your investments, right? Maybe you'll miss your lead target, but if they're ultimately more successful, that's interesting. There was a conversation, I can't tell you the names or anything, but when we were at Salesforce, a very, very senior sales leader was asked about doing another big strategic event in New York City. And he said, I don't want another strategic event. I've already had all my customers of those things. You know what I really need? I need a bunch of bespoke dinners where I can get 12 CIOs of banks in a room to talk to one another. And maybe we have, an Olympian or a famous author or someone come and be part of the conversation. That's 10 times more valuable than a strategic event. And so the marketing team did that for him because they listened and they didn't think, oh, it's better for me to have this huge event and get my face all over the place. It's what's better for the team and ultimately the customer. And that's what they did. And so that's just an example of where marketing listened, support. And that sales leader was like, I will always support marketing because they're listening to me. And so that's, I think, a really important part of this whole conversation.
I agree. I think active listening on both sides is oftentimes not happening. And that causes a lot of friction.
Yeah, it's a two-way street. And, but if it's relationship building, if you do that well, then when you need that sales leader to support you, you just go tell them, I need you to support me on this. It just takes that dialogue and that investment. But will we ever be in a perfectly friction-free environment? No, but that's just part of human nature. But I think, so to round back to your question, providing a marketer the ability to go say, look, I drove that growth and I did that efficiently is the fastest way to get real power at the C-suite table.
For sure. Both the active listening, the investment in that relationship, all of which are really soft skills that I think are often underappreciated and under-recognized as your key to success in any position, whether you're in marketing or not, but particularly in marketing, just because it definitely gets swept in a certain light when it doesn't deserve it. Okay.
Agreed.
Last but not least, who is someone we should have on the podcast?
Two people pop to mind. The first is Stephanie Buscemi. She's the CMO of Confluent. She's also on my board. And I also worked for her. She was the CMO of Salesforce. She's just absolutely tremendous. Brilliant marketer, brilliant leader. I think she'd be great. There's actually two others. Another one is Emma Chalwin at Workday. Just a fantastic leader, one of the best leaders I've ever met in my life. Great marketer in general, but really understands demand gen really well. And then Shannon Duffy at Asana, kind of a different lens, has a very strong kind of product marketing background. CMO knows it all, but really has a really strong bent there. And a great leader and a great person. I think those are three just phenomenal leaders that you should have. And I'm happy to help make intros if that's needed.
I will take you up on that. Well, on that note, one, thank you so much for coming here, Sam. But two, where can folks find you and maybe get to know you better?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. This was great. I really appreciate it. I'm happy to come back on in the future. X account, it's Sam_Iterable CEO on X, and you can easily find me on LinkedIn. And so I really intend to really accelerate and drive a lot of interaction and engagement on X as that under that handle. So folks can find and follow me there, or they can find and follow me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We're glad we're able to be your first exclusive podcast, and welcome,
all right, Jacqueline.
Welcome back to the greater world of Martech.
I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me and look forward to meeting you sometime in the future.
Right back at you.